How's it going, folks? Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, my name is Nick Birkhimer. I'm a technology specialist here at FarmQA, and we're really excited to be doing this webinar today about best practices for soil sampling. We're going to be focusing a lot on how to soil sample in FarmQA to help you guys get the most done that you can this fall. So before we really get to walking through that, we do have a great webinar series coming up here in the next couple months, and I wanted to give you a bit of a preview as to what'll be going on with that. So first off, after this, we're going to kind of continue your workflow next month in October as we talk about variable rate applications from zones to prescriptions. This is going to talk about how you can take some existing data in your FarmQA account, like your soils data or imagery data, and we can turn those into management zones, which you can then write prescriptions off of. That'll be a fantastic webinar coming up there. Next, coming up in mid-November, we have crop planning. For those of you who are familiar with our crop planning feature we released last year, it's a great way to be able to set up your whole year's worth of recommendations, applications, all that kind of fun stuff before the year actually starts. So you can get a head start on things, get everything planned out so that when you're actually in the season, you don't have to focus on like, oh, did I miss this field? Did I miss this rec? Everything's already ready for you. So you can just apply things and move on. And again, that's going to be on November 11th. And then last but not least, on December 9th, we have a what's new and what's next, because we sure do have a lot of new features coming out here. We're working on improvements to our variable rate prescription and zone writing. We've got a nutrient blender coming out, formula recommendations, all that kind of fun stuff, as well as the normal things that we're already kind of working on to improve Farm QA for you guys. So that'll be coming up toward the end of the year as a great way to kind of wrap up our fall. But before that, we've got today's webinar talking about soil sampling. So for today, a lot of what we're going to talk about is really your full soil sampling workflow from the FarmQA side. I'm going to start by covering a few background things that are a little bit outside of the scope of this presentation. So talking a little bit about what you need to kind of get things set up in your account before you actually start soil sampling. But from there, we're going to talk about how to set up your grids, your zones, and your composite samples for whatever type of soil sampling you're going to be doing out in the field. We're going to talk about how to best use our task functionality, which really is an important core piece to soil sampling in FarmQA. We'll talk about how to manage that, get things set up, and get tasks sent out to your folks in the field so you can make sure you're sampling efficiently. And then we'll talk about what it's actually going to be like to sample in the field, different ways to find fields that need to be sampled, ways to get to your soil sampling points, and how to record all your information as you're sampling so that once your data is ready to come back in after it's been processed by the lab, it's going to flow smoothly and easily, and you'll be able to use that data later for being able to share this with your users, write prescription maps, create recommendations, all that kind of fun stuff. I will also note, please don't be afraid to ask questions during the presentation. We'll have a member of the Farm QA team who's in the chat who will be able to stop the presentation and we'll get your questions answered as we're kind of going along because we want to make this as usable for you guys as possible as we're going through this presentation. So with that, I'm going to hop right into the live demo and we're going to get started talking about how we can get you guys set up for soil sampling this year. So now, what we're going to do is I'm going to hop right into my demo FarmQA account here, just to kind of get things started. Something to note about soil sampling in FarmQA is that some folks like to have a new soil sampling growing season whenever they're getting things set up. Part of the reason for that is that it could be a little confusing to say, hey, you know, I want to go to my fields to soil sample, and we need a crop assigned to your fields for soil sampling in the mobile app, but it's not a cornfield anymore. We already harvested that. So what a lot of folks like to do is to have new crops put in their system for sampling season. So for example, you'll have not sampled and sampled crops you can assign to a field. Don't do this in growing seasons where you already have a crop assigned. We would generally recommend that you create a new soil sampling 25 growing season or something along those lines, and then assign all these crops to these fields from there, mostly just so that you don't mess up your previous crop assignments, but we can still bring these into the mobile app at the end of the day. Now, I also mentioned there are a couple other things we generally recommend you have set up as you're moving into soil sampling. One of those things is having management zones ready to go. So if you are going to be zone sampling, we recommend that you either create or upload your management zones beforehand. For this field that I'm going to be working in, I have a demo management zone here that I have turned on. And again, these can be either drawn in your FarmQA app or uploaded from another piece of software. So if you have any questions about working on getting these in, you can always work with a support team, and we'll dive a lot more into making your management zones here next month with our next webinar. But in the meantime, just know that if you're going to be zone sampling, we recommend that before you start getting your grids and everything set up, definitely make sure that you have your zone samples put into your FarmQA account. The other thing that's really important to have set up before you really dive into sampling is to make sure that your work page is set up properly. If you aren't seeing the work page, it is an add-on to your FarmQA account, and you can reach out to the sales and support team if you have questions about getting that enabled or want to give that a try. So for the work page, that's going to be found over here on the left-hand side of the screen in the work tab. Now, to get started, we always recommend going to the task types page first. This is where you set up what kind of work items you can be sending off to folks. So as you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen, I have quite a few task types that have been both preloaded and created by me. The big ones we're going to be working with today are the composite sampling, grid sampling, and zone-based sampling tasks. Now, if I wanted to add a new task to this list that I might not be seeing here, I can come down to the bottom of the page and click on this blue add button. And I'm just going to call this a general soil sampling task. We're going to call this soil sample. Under task category, this is where I say what type of task this is. Again, everything we're working with today is going to be soil sampling. So I'm going to select a soil sample task. And this is important to set your task category because this can affect where in FarmQA you can assign the task from. But for the most part, like I said, we're working with soil sampling tasks here today. Next, you'll set the icon that you want to set this up as. For this one, I usually pick like a shovel or something similar for soil sampling. A vial's also good, but we'll do shovel today. And then you can put in a description. So what's really nice for this is like if you have a bunch of different soil sampling types of tasks, you can put a little more information about what's going to be involved in this. So for example, I can say take 2 core samples, 1 from 0 to 6, and 1 from 6 to 24. And I can have that information kind of put in here in the description or in the instructions as well for this. The next bit down we'll cover a little more later and more in depth, but we have different coloring options. So whenever you're in the mobile app or the web app, you're able to color your fields by task type. This is a really nice way to be able to kind of help plan your route in terms of saying, hey, which fields do I actually need to go sample today? What tasks do I need to get to? We're able to color your fields by their task status, whether there's no task assigned to the field, pending, ready, in progress, or completed. A basic rundown of this is that if it's a pending task, that means that it's coming up in the near future and it'll be ready soon. A ready task means that, hey, we're in the time frame where you want this task completed. Let's go get this done. An in progress task means that someone's already started it, but they haven't completed it yet. And then a completed task means that it's been closed out by the user, that's been done, and you don't need to worry about that field anymore. Like I said, again, we'll talk a little more about how you can color by these in the future, but as of now, that's an important thing to kind of keep in mind as we move throughout the presentation. So I'm going to save my task here. And now I've got these different task types that I can go create for all my fields. Like I said here, the big ones we're focused on today are our composite sampling, grid sampling, and our zone sampling. To give you an idea of what it'll look like to create tasks for your field, I'm going to go back to the home page. And I'm going to start creating a task for one of my fields here. So I'm going to go up to this 3 ponds field, click on it, and then in the slide out map pane on the left, we have this new task icon. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to say I'm going to create a composite sampling task for this field. Now, what's very important to note is that in this page, not only does this let you review which fields this task is going to be created for, but you're going to want to click on this button here to be able to actually set out points where you want to sample in the field. So in terms of composite sampling, there are a couple different ways folks can go about setting your sampling points. At the end of the day, there's not going to be a specific location to tie all of your points, all your data back to, since everything is going in one bag. But at the same time, you might want to say, hey, I want us to sample around the field. I want to make sure that we are sampling the same spot consistently before we go back in and then, combine all of our samples and ship it off to the lab. So what I can do here on this page is I can start laying out points where I want to sample. So I'm going to zoom into my field a little bit here. In the upper left-hand corner of the screen, we can see I have this polygon selected. This means that I can start adding points freehand to this field. And I'm just going to start clicking around, and I'm going to say this is approximately where I want to sample in this field here. Once I'm happy with this, I can click Save. And now when I click on this again, you can see, yep, I've got these couple sample points laid out and ready to go. So I'll click Save. I'll click Next. And then in this Create Tasks window, you're going to have some important information you're going to want to set out. First off, it will let folks know what depths we want to sample at. So I can say I want 0 to 6 and 6 to 24-inch samples. For these sample depths, please note that you can add these in yourselves from the soils page. You're able to add in depths for your soil test results, and we're able to bring these into your tasks. If you need a hand with getting this set up, please let the support team know, and we'd be happy to give you a hand in getting this rolling here. Next point, this is really important, the marker types. So this is the marker layer that all of your points are going to be going into once you're done sampling. The reason why we do this is because we want to make sure that you know where your points are going into. It's easy to get a lot of marker layers built up in your account, and you might not want everything to be in the same layer. So under here, I can access this drop down and say, yep, I want these guys going into my soil sample location marker layer, as opposed to grid samples, soil barcode, or the rest. Next, we're going to want to talk about where we're going, like when we want to have this completed by. So I have a start by and finish by date. This is the window during which I want my task to be completed. So what I can say is, yep, I want this to start today, and then I would like this done within the next week or so. So now we've established that time frame. This is what we're going to use whenever we're coloring our fields later to say, hey, this is when you wanted it done by. This is how we know whether it's a pending, ready, or a to be completed task at some point. Next, we also have our assign to dropdown. This is where you're going to say which user I want to complete this. There's kind of two ways to go about this. You can either say, hey, look, all these fields for this farm or for this grower, this is all going to be assigned to this sampler, like sampler A. Or you might have a situation where you say, you know what, we just want to have a big bucket full of tasks. When our guys are going out and checking their phone, we just want to be able, them to be able to reach in, grab a task, and be able to go. If you want to do the former, where you want to have things assigned specifically, you can assign this to a specific user here, and now this is going to go right into that user's device. Or if you wanted to leave things a little bit more broad for anyone to come pick them up, we can just leave it unassigned, and then anyone's able to go in and easily access this. When you're done, you'll click Create. And now we have this new task that's been created that the users can go through and access from their mobile device here. Now, things are going to be a little different if you're grid sampling here. So I'm going to go hop into the Schmidt field, click on this guy, and I'm going to go through the same process of clicking Add New Task. But for this one, I want to do a grid sampling task. So again, the same thing in the Create Tasks window under Fields. I'm going to click on Schmidt field. Now in the upper left-hand corner, instead of clicking on this polygon, I'm going to click on this little table to apply a grid. What's going to happen immediately is that we're going to lay this grid out over the field. Something to note about this is you can see the points might seem a little dense. That's because, as we can see in the upper right-hand corner of this window, I have it set so that each point is representative of a 2.5 acre grid. So this is remembered in your FarmQA system, so you can keep stamping this on other fields. But we can change this as needed. So for example, let's say this guy wants to do 5 acre grids. I can easily just set that to 5, enter. And now we can see things are a little more spread out here. Now, other things to note is if you don't like how this is positioned entirely, we can see at the bottom, I got a couple guys that are kind of just laying right outside of the field here. If I want those to be moved up, what I can do is I can grab the middle of the grid and I can drag it like so I can position things just how I want. I can also go rotate this by dragging this side to side like that. If you want to get a better map view and kind of see around what's happening, you can come over here to the right-hand side of the screen and click on this pause button. That's going to stop us from moving the grid around, and I'm able to move the map around a bit more just to make sure that I have my grid lined up the way that I want to. But I can come here, say I think this is lined up pretty well, and then I'll click this check mark. Now what'll happen is we have our grid laid out. We can see where all of our points are. But what's cool is that this page now turns into a great little editing page. So if some of our points aren't lined up how we want to still, we can get those moved around again. So for example, let's say, hey, this point, I'm not liking where this is at the end of the day. I want to be able to drag it right around there. I think that's a little more representative. Or we can come over to this guy and say, you know what? I don't think I need to sample right here. It's right on the border. I'm not feeling that point. I can click on it. And then in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, I can click on this eraser icon, and I can now remove that point from here. So once we're happy with our edits to our grid, we can click Save, and then I'll click Next. And then from here, I'll put the same information down for this task. So we'll put down our sampling depth. We'll say for this one, all of our markers are going to go into our grid sample markers layer. I'll set this same time frame for when I want this done, and I'm going to leave this not assigned. And from here, I can go in and I can create that grid sampling task. The last thing that I kind of wanted to cover is zone sampling tasks and how we're going to go create and get those set up. So I'm going to come into my home field. And again, same process. I'll click on new task up here in the slide out map pane, and we're going to click on zone sampling. The biggest difference we'll see here when I click on home field is on the right-hand side of the screen, you now see I have this management zones option. This is going to let me pull up a management zone whenever I'm creating this guy. And so now I can see exactly where all of my zones are as I'm getting this set up. So what I can do from here is I can start laying points down to go sample at from this screen specifically. So I can say, you know what, I want to sample in each of these points for zone 1. I want to have, let's say, another 5 odd points in zone 2, and then a few more in zone 3, and then load up a few more in zone 4. So I can have this set up, visually confirm everything looks the way I want over my zone map that I've created or uploaded, and then I click save, and now I have this guy saved up and ready to go. So now when we pull up here, you can see, yep, I've got my zone map, I've got my points just where I want them. This looks fantastic. So I'll click save, and once again, we'll add in our sampling information here. Now, some things you can do to kind of save some time on this process. As you kind of saw, it can be a little tedious to go through and keep clicking those kind of same buttons over and over and over again. Another option that we have, I'm going to hop into another one of my demo farms here. So another option that we have here is you can go into the fields page. And once you're here, you can also start to schedule your tasks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down, check a couple of these fields here, say all of these are getting grid sampled, for example. I can click on schedule task, grid sampling, and now I can come through into this create tasks page, and I can go through these fields and I can start stamping grids on all of these guys. So I'm going to come through here, apply grid. I'll say this 2.5 acre grid looks good. Check, save. And I can just kind of come down the list, keep stamping these grids down. And I can just kind of work my way through this. At the end, we will create tasks for each of these fields. But this is just a way to kind of save a little bit of time on the back end whenever you're putting in specific information for who's going to be completing these tasks, when they need to be done, stuff like that. So I can set this time frame again, do all this kind of fun stuff. But now instead of just doing this for one task, I've done this for 4 different fields, and I've created 4 different tasks for this as well. Now, in terms of being able to see your tasks after you've created them, they'll live down here in the work page. So what'll happen here when you first land in the work page is you're going to start in the task list. The task list will default to the current work page. It just shows all the open tasks you have out in your account right now. So we can go in here and we can see where your tasks are, what fields they're assigned to, what types of tasks, and who's going to be getting them done. So for example, let's say I just want to see what work we have in terms of our grid sampling. I can come over here to this filter. I can say, just show me all of my grid sampling tasks right now. I can click filter. And now this is all that I'm seeing is my current grid sampling task that I have out to go complete here. I can, of course, edit this as well. Let's see, grid sampling, soil sample, composite sampling. And so I can get this great view of all of my sampling that needs to be done. And in terms of work that's been completed, you can also click on this drop down to go to completed work. And we can see everything that's been done at the end of the day. So here's where all your record keeping is going to happen in terms of what's been sampled and where. A great way to kind of keep track of stuff as you're moving through your season. Something that I like to do as well, if you don't want to keep redoing that work that I just did over and over again, is we can create a new view here in the task list page. So I can click on this plus button to create a new view. We're going to call this soil sampling, current work. And I'm going to apply that filter under the type to say I want to see everything for composite sampling, grid sampling, and zone sampling. I can click filter, and then I'll click save. So now under this view, whenever I click on this view in the upper left-hand corner of my task list, I'm able to go through and see in this organization all the different soil sampling tasks that I have out right now. Again, great way just to kind of drop in and see this is what needs to be happening at the end of the day. So that's one place where your tasks are going to live. The other place that's really important to check is going to be on the mobile side. So when I'm in mobile, I'm going to always start in mobile by coming over to the settings page and clicking on sync now. But you'll be able to see everything here from the work page. So when I come into work, you can now see that I have all of these different task types loaded in here. Now, in terms of what kind of tasks are going to be brought in the upper left-hand corner right now, the filter is set to all tasks. So any task that's been made within the Plymouth Acres account is going to be shown on this page. I can filter this out to say, just show me the tasks that are assigned to me specifically. So now here's the work that I have to get done for this organization right now. If this is getting to be a bit of a big list and we have a lot of different task types in here, we can come to the task type filter up on the left-hand side, and we can start to sort things a little bit. For example, we can say, how about distance? Which ones are farthest away versus which ones are closest to me? I can go and just set this to all of my tasks. Now I can start to see, okay, this one's closest to me, this one's farthest away. That's going to be a great way for me to start routing things and say, okay, which ones do I want to tackle first versus which ones do I want to tackle later? We also have options to be able to take a look at this by crop. Not as dynamic here because everything's just set to not sampled, but if you know that you want to go do all of your sampling for your fields that, or like do all your work for your fields that have corn planted to them or soybeans or whatever, that's a really nice way to be able to get that filter going and to get things a little more sorted in your work page. So like I said here, this is a really nice spot to be able to start to figure out what you want your sampling workflow to be. Again, I can come in here, I can go filter this by either finish by date to see which tasks need to be completed first versus latest, or I can come down here and say which ones are going to be closest to me versus which ones are farthest away. I can then access those tasks and I can get rolling from there. Another great way to do this is to come over to the fields page. And like I said, we can start to color our fields by task. So I've already done this, and you can kind of see that the fields aren't the same colors they were in the web version. In mobile now, we've got a couple different colors we're working with here. To see what these mean, I can come down here to this info button at the bottom of the screen, and I'm able to see which fields have a pending task versus which ones have a ready task. Like I said earlier, all pending tasks are going to be ones that have a task where the complete window is coming up soon, either going to be starting like today or the next couple days. And all ready tasks means that, oh, you are in the window in which we want this task to be completed. So looking at this, I'm probably going to want to tackle that Schmidt field first since there is a ready task. But the 3 ponds and the home fields, those are going to be ones where I'm coming up on that, right? I want to come back to that soon to get some work done. As to how you'll get this set up, we'll come over here to the left-hand side of the screen in the slide out map pane. And then at the bottom down here under field color, I've selected task. Once you select task, you'll have two options that'll be brought up down here. First, the task type you want to color by, and then the task condition that you want to also be bringing into this. So for task condition, I'm bringing in stuff that is either pending, ready, or in progress. I really only care about the tasks that are going to be coming up for these fields so I can start to plan how I want to get my work done here. Now, it's also important to note that I'm only coloring this by zone sampling tasks. So when I come in here, I can set this to different task types as well. So for example, if I click grid sampling, I'm only coloring by grid sampling task now. So now whenever I look at my field, I can see that there is a pending grid sampling task for the Schmidt field, but nothing for anything else. So that helps me know what kind of tasks I need to be completing here. But just something important to note as well, if you have a bunch of different task types, you'll need to come through here and kind of cycle through these task types to see which ones are going to be ready for your fields when. But like I said, this is going to be a great way for you to determine which tasks and which fields need to be sampled first. So with that in mind, let's talk about how we're actually going to go through and complete sampling for all these fields. I'm going to start here with the home field, but instead of starting here in the fields page, I'm going to come over to the work page, and I'm going to access my task from here. The reason being is that this is going to snap you right to the field as well, and it's going to help complete your task workflow a little more efficiently if you work out of the work page here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my task for the home field. I've got a little bit of information about my task in here in terms of what my task ID is, what kind of task, who was created by, and how complete it is. As we go through and collect sample points, this is going to fill up to show us just how much we've sampled here. But for the most part, you're just going to see this being either empty or full, depending on if you have completed or have not completed the task yet. But I'm going to go through here. I'm going to click on this arrow to hop into my field. And now we're getting ready to start sampling. So a couple things to note here is you'll see that I have this green pulsating dot that's going to correspond to my current location. That's going to show you where you're at in the field. The other really important thing that I wanted to show is we're going to have a line drawn between you and the next closest point to kind of give you an idea of where you want to be sampling at. Right now, the line is drawn red because I'm more than 10 feet away from this sampling point. But once you're within 10 feet of that sampling point, we're going to flip that line from red to green just to be able to say, hey, you're pretty close to this point. You should be good to go sample right now. So you'll see this number above the point as well. That's going to show how far away I am from that point in feet. That'll edit as I move closer or further away from the point. And this is going to act as your navigation to get to these points where you have to sample within the field. Also note that whenever I created this task, I made it using this management zone. The zone is going to pop up automatically once you enter the field. So one less button for you to click as you're moving through and getting ready for sampling here. Now, let's say that I've navigated to this point. I'm in this point in zone 2. I am ready to go. What's important to note is once you get to this point, you'll have to click on the point to start collecting your barcode numbers. So how we do things is that you can, for each of your points, you'll want to give it an ID or a reference barcode number. So I'll kind of give you a better idea of how that works here by clicking on this point. So when you get to the point, click on it. And then in this screen, we're either going to prompt you and say, hey, we'll ask you to enter your barcode number by texting it in, or you can use the camera on your mobile device to scan it in. If you use AgVise Labs, for example, they'll print out barcodes on your sample bags. You'll be able to scan that in right here, and you can associate that barcode with this sample location. This works great for grid sampling. You'll be able to keep track of all of your barcodes as you're out and sampling in the field real time. Now, if you're zone sampling and each of your different points is going to be measured as a different, let's say for each of your points you stop at, all of the samples in that zone are going to go into one bag. What we recommend you do is that you just like take down generic numbers per point in the zone. And then for the last point in the zone, you actually record your barcode number. And I'll give you an idea of how that'll look here. So right now I'm working in zone 2. So let's say for this management zone, this is going to be point number 2A. I'm going to click OK. And now a few important things have happened. First, that point has flipped from being a blue point to a brown point, meaning that I've sampled that. And we're also able to see that reference number that I put in right there in the point. Now my line has also snapped to my next closest point saying, hey, this is where we think you should go sample next. If I'm only working in zone 2 though, I'm probably going to want to go to this point next up here. I'll click on this guy and we're say, you know what, we're going to call this one sample 2B. We'll call this one 2C. And then as I get to the last point in the zone, what I'm going to do is once I've reached this final point, which is going to be the last place where we're actually taking a soil sample at, instead of putting this in as 2E or whatever that'll be, I'm actually going to scan in the barcode here. Again, the barcode is going to be that reference number that's on the bag that's going to the lab. That's ultimately going to be what ties the test results back from the lab into your FarmQA account. So we'll say that the reference number is something like this. I'll click OK. And now we have that bag, that reference number on the bag tied back to this point. Once your data comes back in from the lab, we're going to associate everything to this zone. But at the end of the day, we're going to see this point as being the one that's going to be the home of your sampling data. The reason that we do that is because we need to be able to tie all of your data in FarmQA back to these. We need to be able to tie all the data in your FarmQA account that's soils related back to an individual point. This is going to be the guy where we're going to want to tie that to at the end of the day. Also, please note that you don't have to type that in every single time. If you're on your mobile device, we are going to open up your camera, so you'll be able to easily take a picture of that barcode. We'll scan that information, and we can just get that brought right back in nice and easy. Now, what you'll do as you move through here is you'll basically complete the same process for your next zones. Most folks tend to go zone by zone. We don't want you to have to navigate to the closest point and switch between bags because then your data could get mixed up, and we never want that to happen. So like I said here, I'll go through another quick example with this next zone here. We'll do this for my zone 4. So I'm just going to hop in here, say we're in zone 4 now. I'm going to start putting in sampling points for all of these guys. This is stop 2, so that's 4B, 4C. And for our last stop, we're going to scan in our barcode. And now once that data comes back in from the lab, we'll be able to tie that all to this point here. Now to show you something else, I'm going to back out of the screen quick. And you can see under the sampling progress here just how completed we are at the end of the day. So this is really good if you get most of the way done with the project, but you have to step away for a minute or something comes up or you're not done with it. You'll be able to see just how completed you are here on this screen, and we're able to keep track of that. And you can also see that come up as an in progress layer later, an in progress task later on. If you're done with this, what you're going to want to do to close out this task is come here to the bottom of the screen and click on this green check mark. From here, we'll click Save. And then now we see this as a completed task. You're not going to be able to see this anymore in the mobile version. But on the website, if you go to the completed work page, you're going to be able to see that this task has been completed, it's done, and we're ready to move on to the next one. For grid sampling, it's going to be very similar here. I'm going to hop into my grid sampling task, hop into the field. And now we can see that I have my whole grid laid out here. You're not able to see my location for this one because I'm not located in this field right now. But the same principle applies where you're going to see that green pulsating dot that'll correspond to your location. You'll start in one corner of the field and you can start to work through and get your sampling plan worked out. So I'll click on this guy here. We'll just say that this is sampling point 1, for example, and I'll click OK. Now for this situation, this might not be sampling point 1. This could be an actual barcode that you're scanning in, or this could just be, hey, I'm just writing this down on the bag as it goes into the sampling lab. What's cool here is that I can hop into my next point, and we've auto-advanced you to point 2. So if you're going this route where you're just putting in like numbers just to kind of keep track of each of these points, we're going to auto-advance this as we move through. So now I can move on to point 3, just scan it in. Come to point 4, click on the point, already done, etc. It just saves you those couple clicks as you're moving through your sampling task, just to be able to help you get this done a little bit more efficiently. Now, when you're done with this, of course, you'll click on this green check mark, click on the check again, and then that's going to clear out your sampling task here once you're done with it. Last, let's go in and we'll do a composite sample, which should be this guy right down here. So kind of like I said here, what we're going to want to do is it's going to be very similar to zone sampling for composite sampling. Basically, what we want to do is keep track of where we sampled so we can sample more consistently, but not every point's going to have a reference number tied to it where we have a different bag with a sample that's associated to each different point. So what I'm going to want to do here, very similar, is just start sampling at one of these points. We'll call this point 1. When I navigate to the next point, it's just going to be called point 2, point 3, etc. And we'll complete this as we go throughout the field, continuing to add soil to our composite sample until we reach our last point, where now we're ready to associate a barcode with these points. So when I get to this last point, I'll scan in my barcode and click OK. So now I've sampled this entire field. I have all of these locations that I stopped at saved, and I also have my barcode tied to this point at the end of the day. I'll click check. You can see now we're 100% complete. I'll click check a second time, and we'll go ahead and we'll save this guy. So now once I've completed my sampling task, I want to show you what happens to these points when you're done with them. I'm going to come back. Oh,
real quick,
what's up, Galia?
before you keep going, there was a question. Can you scan the barcode on the first point and then do the ABC, or what is the reason why it's done last?
Yep, absolutely. That's just kind of been what we've recommended since we kind of see things as, since you're wrapping things up with that last point, that's where you'd want to scan the barcode at. But absolutely what you said is correct as well. You'd be able to scan your barcode in at that first point, and then you can put in more of those placeholder points as you go down the line. It just kind of comes up to what you prefer at the end of the day, but what you described where you start with the barcode and then kind of go on from there, that would work just as well. Were there other questions, Galia?
No, that was it.
Sweet. So where your sampling points are going to live now is we'll come back here to the web app and we'll go to the soils page. I'm going to come down here, so I'm working in my Plymouth Acres farms. And now we can see for each of these fields that I have soil sampling locations associated with each of these guys. What's important to note here when I'm in my locations by row view is I'm able to see each of my markers, the marker types, and then what my reference numbers for each of these are going to be. So you can see here for most of these points, it's just kind of those zone placeholders. So 2A, 2B, 2C. But these guys at the end, these are going to be the ones that have the barcodes associated with them. So that once we get our data back from the lab, we're going to be able to tie our data back to these points, which are in those specific zones. When I come to my samples list, we get a little more information about this. So for example, you're able to see over here which zone each of these points was taken in, as well as the date this was collected on. So just gives you a little bit more information about when these points were collected and what was kind of happening with all these guys. And that's going to be true for all of my fields here that I just sampled. So great way to kind of double check your work and to see stuff as it's coming back in from the field. Like you don't have to wait super long to see where you were sampling in the field and where all this data got collected from. Something else that I wanted to talk about with this was the use case in which you already have pre-existing points that you're working with. So once you've started using us for a couple years, or if you already have pre-existing sampling points, you don't have to go through the process of creating these points over and over and over again. So for example, I'm going to hop into another one of my older fields that already has some pre-existing sampling points. Let's use this guy as an example. So I'm going to come into my 19 Northeast field, and I'm going to create a new task for this one. Take just a second to get him loaded here. So again, same workflow. We're going to come over here, click on new task, and we're just going to call this soil sample test, for example. We'll check here. If there's a management zone I can tie it to, I can, but otherwise I can just pass on actually setting points here since I already have pre-existing points. I can click next, and I can just put in this general information. The important thing for this is that you can skip that point where you set down where you want to sample in the field, because we're just going to go ahead and use our pre-existing sample locations for getting that done. So I'm going to sync up my mobile app to bring that new task down here. And now I can come over into the work page. I'm going to move down the Tubler-owned farms here. Perfect. Finish by, yep, looks like it's going to be this one here. So what I can do now when I'm in this task is I can click into the field. And so what I'll do instead of having my points pulled up automatically is I'll come over to the layers button here on the side, and I'll turn on my soil sample markers that I have previously created. So now this becomes my sampling plan at the end of the day. I've got these points that I've already collected. I know what I'm doing. I just have to get these guys rolling here. For sampling at these previously input locations, you'll start by just clicking on the guy. And then you'll see here that it says enter sample ID or scan barcode at soil sample marker 1. So we're not actually adding in new markers. We're just taking a new sample at this previously existing location. So I'll just say, yep, this is going to be sample number 1. That looks good. And we're just going to rock through here quick. I'm going to add a couple to give you an idea of what this will look like. And then I'm going to click OK. When I'm done, I'll click check, click save. And now I've gone in and I've taken those samples using those previously existing points. So when I come here into the soils page, I'm going to go down to this field. And now when we come down to collection date, we can see that these markers 1 through 5 had samples collected on 9/2/25. So I have these points that I have these new reference numbers that I've taken. I've sampled these points more recently, but I didn't add new points to the sampling plan. Actually, I've just said at these markers, I've taken new soil samples down here. Something else to note with these guys is that they weren't actually associated with a management zone since I just sampled them. If you need to associate these points with the management zone for being able to create zone maps and prescriptions later, I can just multi-select these guys. And at the top of the screen, I can click on Assign Management Zone. From here, I can say which management zone I want to use. We're going to use my NDVI zone maps for this one, and I can click Assign. Yep, now we can see that that's updated, and I have the zones associated with each of these points. Like I said, we'll cover this more in future webinars, but now these soil samples are ready to move into our zone creation and prescription writer workflow, where we're able to go through and start writing prescriptions with this soils data as it comes in. Speaking of bringing soils data in, it's important to note that you're able to bring in your soils data with a CSV file from whatever lab you're using. If you have questions on that, we can help you get that set up as well. Additionally, we also have lab integrations. So the big one is AgVise labs that we have. You're able to go through here and you can add a new lab to your account. You're then able to bring in data from AgVise and other labs really easily, just sync it right up using those reference numbers. Again, you can reach out to the support team. We'd be happy to give you a hand in terms of getting that set up. But those are going to kind of be the last little pieces that would be involved in bringing your data in once that's done. With that, that's most of our soil sampling workflow in terms of being able to set your points out, figure out where you're going, and then actually collect them when you're in the field. We've got a few minutes here now, and so I wanted to open the floor to see if there were any questions about soil sampling or any clarification that we can provide about these workflows.
Right now, there's no other questions in the chat, Nick, but please feel free to type any questions in there that you may have.
Yep, absolutely. We'll give you guys a few more minutes if you have any questions. And also, as a reminder for future webinars, our next webinar is coming up in mid-October, where we're going to be talking about creating your management zones, your zone maps, and then writing prescriptions off of that. That's going to take a lot of the data that we collected today and is going to put that to use as we move on into actually creating our management zones and prescriptions. So that'll be a great one to follow up on the data that we collected using the instructions from today's webinar.
Okay, there is another question. Is there a way to get the numbers to pre-populate when resampling a location versus having to retype it at each point?
Gotcha. So it sounds like we're saying if we're resampling a point, kind of like what I did here. So here, for example, I have these points that are pre-populated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. We're not able to pre-populate these. The best we can do is that we do allow you to go ahead and advance those one at a time. So at the end of the day, we need you to start somewhere. So in this situation, since we're looking at points 1 through 15 in this field, we would just want you to click on this guy, initially set that 1, and then as we go through, we're able to advance by 1 and basically pre-populate as we complete the sampling task. So while we're not able to pre-populate every point, if you give us a place to start, we're going to be able to advance that for you to kind of get those numbers to be brought in.
Okay, so what are the other labs are integrated into your system other than AgVice?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have AgVice right now. We're also working on getting an integration with Midwest Labs going. We're also working to get lab submission with A&L up in Canada, up for our Canadian customers as well. We also have a more generic lab submission form that's going to be coming out here within the next couple months. That'll probably be ready for that December webinar that I mentioned. And that's going to be able to get data back from any lab generally. And that can get flowing into your FarmQA account rather easily. If you aren't working with one of those big labs, kind of like I said, AgVise, Midwest, or A&L, you can also export your data to a CSV file, which is an Excel spreadsheet, and you can shoot that over to the FarmQA support team, and we'd gladly give you a hand with getting that brought into your account. So in the What's New coming up here in September, look out for a bunch of new lab integrations that we have working on. So that should be coming out here within the next couple months as your data is coming back in post-sampling season. Were there other big labs you wanted to mention, Galia, that we have integrations coming out for?
A&L Great Lakes here in the US is also being planned, and Servitech.
Perfect. Cool, good stuff. Well, to get things wrapped up, I just wanted to remind folks that you can always reach out to the FarmQA support team. Here's our contact information. So you can give us a call at this phone number and one of our support reps will be able to call in. We'll be able to give you a hand in getting your questions answered. You can also always email support@farmqa.com. That'll get you right in touch again with one of our support reps. We'll be happy to give you a hand. And we also have a self-serve option through support@farmqa.com. We have a great library of support articles that go through our workflows so you can get questions answered for yourself there. And as always, we have all of our previously streamed webinars available to check out on our YouTube page or at farmqa.com/webinars. Again, great place to access these resources whenever you need to take a look at them. All right, well, with that, thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate your time. Hope that you learned a lot, and we'll see you for our next webinar coming up here in October. Thanks, and again, appreciate it. All right, bye-bye.